Well, hello. Welcome to the Tilt and Shift Photography Business Podcast. I thought I would start throwing business in there because we talk a lot about business. So let's just be clear. We talk about photography, we talk about business, we talk about photographers. I've decided to add in another element to this podcast because I want to serve you in the best way possible. And while my guests bring a variety of perspectives and a huge amount of experience, and then I coach on some of the points that they bring up, some of the lessons and expansions that they've experienced. I also kind of want to talk about some of the nitty-gritty things about becoming a better photographer, telling a better story. And the reason I want to do that is because it really plays into how you're able to market yourself, how you're able to brand yourself, how you are able to have a more successful photography business, as well as be a more satisfied and fulfilled artist. So when I work with my coaching students one-on-one, oftentimes I will see a common theme come up for them. And this week, I was doing one of my favorite things, one of my favorite activities with my coaching clients, and this is something I called shoot shadowing, because I don't want to call it a critique. people people kind of shy away from the word critique. And honestly, friends, if you want to be a better artist, being critiqued is part of the process. You can self-critique, you can have someone else help you through it, but getting objective eyes on your work is super important because it will balance out how you see your art, because we bring so much heart into what we make. It's really hard to understand how it hits with other people. And to a certain extent, we really want to remain true to what we are creating and therefore not be influenced by what other people are saying. But we sometimes want to talk about whether or not something in the background is distracting from the message that you are trying to convey in your art. So critiquing is a super helpful way to become a better photographer. And so with my coaching students, I do this thing called shoot shadowing, which is where they bring up a whole Lightroom catalog, and without calling anything, everything is in there, and we go through it together. And it feels kind of naked. It feels like you're like, oh God, I'm showing you my underwear, and they're not my best ones. But that's okay. I can see you in your granny underpants. It's totally fine. I don't know if I like that metaphor. Whatever. I'll leave it in there. Okay, so shoot shadowing. I'm in my students' catalog. We're talking, and I see something that I see in nearly everyone's catalog, and that is hesitation. What hesitation looks like is when you're standing far away and we are an observer of the moment. Sometimes observing the moment is fine, but generally we're looking at photos or art because we want to feel something. And we don't feel it by standing on the sidelines, my friends. We have to get right in there. Of course, there are times when you want a longer lens, you want to be a little further away. But I'm talking about hesitation, meaning you could be closer or you're not intentionally choosing to be far away. Hesitating is when You don't know what your story is. You don't know what you're looking for, but you're taking a photo anyway. This plays into a frame of mind and a question that I'm going to bring up repeatedly on this podcast. And this is one of whether we're being proactive or reactive to a situation. And a lot of the times it's really easy to get into being reactive to something. We see something happening and therefore we just shoot it. And maybe something cool will happen in this process. I'm going to give you 3 questions to help you to instead be proactive. Proactive means that you are using your front brain. So when we're reactive, we're responding to a situation and we're kind of not necessarily in the fight or flight response, but we are in a state of mind that is dictated by something happening to us. Meaning, oh shit, they're cutting the cake over there. I got to get over there. And then I just start shooting. Versus, oh, hey, something is happening. I'm going to go over there and check it out and figure out how best to shoot this. Totally different frames of mind. Proactive versus reactive. And I totally get it. We're on a shoot. It can be really easy to be really reactive to stuff. And yeah, you're going to get some good things. But if you're proactive, you're going to get way better and way more good things. So how do we switch that frame of mind? How do we eliminate our hesitation? The first question that you're going to ask yourself is this: what story am I trying to tell? What story am I trying to tell? What story do I want to tell? Give yourself a breath or 2 or 3 to answer that question. You see something happening, you hustle over there. If you're not asking yourself this question, you're just going to start shooting. And there's going to be distracting things in the background, and there's going to be missed moments, missed composition that could be better. Whereas if you ask yourself consciously, intentionally, what story am I trying to tell? That totally shifts your brain. And it shifts the way you are looking at the situation. What story am I trying to tell? The second question I want you to ask yourself, once you kind of have an idea of what the story is. So for instance, mom is helping her son put on his socks. The story is how much she cares for this kid. The story is maybe he's growing out of this and learning to put on his own socks. The story is maybe he doesn't like mom doing this and it makes mom giggle. So what is the story that you're trying to tell about the relationship demonstrated by what's happening in front of you? The next thing I want you to ask is, what in the scene is adding to my story? So when you frame something, we often, when we come into a situation, we notice the main subjects, we notice the main characters in the story. And so we frame around them, which is good, but it can be better if we can find a frame that includes supporting actors, supporting characters, supporting elements that, or context, if you will, that enhance and increase the strength of that story. So if we're in a situation, let's talk about weddings. They happen all the time. We're so focused on the couple when there's so much interesting stuff going on around behind them. So, okay, you've got a first dance photo of them But what are the rest of the people doing? How are they responding? Include include the people who are interested in your subjects. If you're including the reactions to the moment instead of just the moment, your photo goes from being a moment to being a story. And stories have way more impact than moments. Us photographers, we get so caught up in moments. Moments are any time you click that shutter. Are you telling a story? What story are you trying to tell? What elements can I include to better tell this story? The third one I want you to ask, and this is where we all can grow exponentially if we just start paying attention to this one thing, is what is taking away from the story? So this means very simple things, simple but sometimes hard to do. Elements of like cleaning up your background. Friends, messy, chaotic backgrounds, if they're not part of the story, absolutely are detracting away. Elements in the back that are kind of like intersecting with people's heads, or like blown out highlights that are behind the subject. When you include these things in the frame that are not contributing to your story, you are lessening the impact of the story. Let's go back to the first dance. So let's say they're having their first dance, they're having this beautiful time together, and you pan out to show the crowd and there's no crowd there, or it's just a bunch of empty chairs, or people are not watching them, they're all looking at their phones. These are all examples of things that are actually distracting from your story. They're taking away from the story that you're trying to tell about your subjects. Another example, so an example of something being kind of messy in the background is when, let's say, you have mother and kid are like playing on the ground, and there's some like stuff in the background, like in their backyard. And those things, like let's say there's like a white chair. If you include that chair in the frame and it has nothing to do with the story, our brains get distracted by it. We might not notice it as us, the photographer. We might not notice it because we know what we're focusing on. But here's the point of getting your work critiqued, is that I'm going to look at that, and that's the first thing I'm going to see. I'm going to just see this chair. And the reason that that is not helpful in your story is because it's distracting my attention to, my brain has to process, there's a chair. Does the chair have anything to do with what's happening here? No, it doesn't. Okay, I'm back at the subject. You actually have to, your brain actually has to process that, especially if it's something like a highlight. If it's like a white chair and you've got a black and white photo, our eyes immediately go to highlights in photos. Photography is drawing with light. Our eyes go to the light. So whatever's lightest in your frame is where your eyes are going to go first. So when you frame something, think about, should I move my body a little bit so that there's nothing hanging out in the background, so that there's no, like, if you're in a playground, there's no like monkey bars going through the people's heads. Can I like get up a little bit higher so the frame's more on the grass rather than with the jungle gym stuff behind them? Or if we're at a wedding, are there like exit signs that are brightly lit? Are there people who don't give a shit about what's going on? Am I including them in the frame? If something is pulling your eye away from the subject, if it's pulling your eye away from the photo, or if it's not contributing to that story that you are trying to tell, get rid of it. And do not be afraid to crop things out. There are so many photos I see that if you would just crop that, we wouldn't be having any of these distraction issues that we're having. Okay. So, how do we go from being reactive to proactive in making a photo, in responding to a scene? How do we get rid of the hesitation that we have when we're watching a scene, trying to decide whether we should take a photo and what that photo should be? Ask yourself those 3 questions. What story am I trying to tell? What elements can I include that will enhance this story? And what do I need to subtract to make the story more impactful? What do I need to subtract so that my story is not distracted by something else? Give it a shot. Let me know if it helps. Let me know if you want to do some shoot shadowing with me. They're super fun. I'm not scary. And it will totally change how you go into your next session. Hit me up, email me, let me know what you think. I hope this was helpful. I will talk to you next week.